and go for it.
All right. Well, thank you for having me here. I'm really looking forward to this. I have been looking forward to this. I'm going to be talking about teaching deafblind people to communicate with the public. I am Donna Sauerberger, and I'm an orientation and mobility specialist. I met my first deafblind person when I was pregnant with my now 45-year-old son. So I've been doing this for a little while. Excuse me. You hopefully don't need to take notes. I'm going to try to make this interactive, but you can find all this information on my website at www.sauerberger.org. That's SAUERBURGER.org/ Donna has one N in it, DONA / DBCOM, COMM, DBCOMM.htm. And in there is a link to an article that I wrote with Dr. Jean Borquin, teaching deafblind people to communicate and interact with the public, critical issues for travelers who are deafblind. That was published in the Journal of Visual Impairment and Blindness in 2005. So let's get started. So how the heck does a deafblind person express themselves to the public? Well, there's a number of ways. And I'm going to list these very quickly because we're going to see some videos and you're going to see a lot of these in action. So they can gesture, they can maybe write some notes, they can have prepared cards or signs to present, they can use communication devices, and I can't keep up with all the latest technology that there is for deafblind people to type or print and then receive the communication through the written communication through the device. If the deafblind person can speak so that well enough to be understood, they may use their voice or use a recording, and they can use symbols or pictures or a map, etc. And we'll have examples of each of these. So, okay, that's easy. How is the public supposed to respond back to the deafblind person? I want to emphasize that the public has to be told what to do. They're not going to know, oh, deafblind, I know how to communicate with that person. So whatever it is that the public's going to be doing to respond to the deafblind person has to tell them what to do. One way to communicate is to just tap them to alert them that they're ready to help. Maybe they go up to McDonald's with a little card to present and say, please tap me when you can help. Leave their hand there, they get tapped, and they come out with the next communication. So tapping, writing or spelling to the deafblind person. If the deafblind person can see well enough, maybe they can write notes for the deafblind person. They may have to use large, thick markers, etc., to make it able to be read. They can also print in the deafblind person's palm, print letters to be able to be understood. If the deafblind person can see or hear well enough to understand speech, the public may speak. It may be that the deafblind person has to say, please speak into my microphone, please speak close to my left or right ear, etc. The public can also give a yes-no signal. Sometimes the deafblind person will go into the bus, they can see well enough, and they'll ask, please shake your head yes or no. Is this the 6Q bus, etc. If they can also set up signals. The deafblind person can set up a signal and say, please tap me once for yes, twice for no, 3 times for I don't know or I don't understand. And lastly, the public can do some kind of action to communicate to the deafblind person. So it's time to get out the popcorn. It's time for videos. And I'm going to show you some videos and ask you to observe what kind of communication strategies that I just listed can you observe. And I'm going to review again real quickly what kind of things you're going to be looking for. The deafblind person making gestures, to communicate using a gesture, or to communicate by writing notes or using a card, maybe using their voice, maybe using some kind of a symbol or picture or map or something like that. and watch for the public to respond by tapping to say that they're ready, by writing back to the deafblind person, maybe printing in their palm, by speaking to the deafblind person. I'll give you a hint. You're not going to see that because both of the people here do not hear or see well enough to be able to understand the public speaking. And maybe giving yes, no signals or taking some kind of action to communicate. And I'll give you a little history of these videos. These were made, Jennifer was asking, is this old? Because the guys are kind of dressed like we did 30 years ago. Yes, these videos are old. I made them when I was going to be going to Germany, right after the Berlin Wall came down. And I thought, well, while I'm over there, I'll offer to show the orientation and mobility specialists in Germany that deafblind people can travel independently. I mean, it's one thing for me to say, yes, they can do it. They do it in America. I wanted to actually show them it being done. So I approached two men who I had taught to travel independently. And I said, I'm going to Germany. Do you mind if I bring a video camera? And back then, guys, the video camera was this big. It was, I hold it along on your shoulder and take a videotape you doing different things. And so we set up, they said, sure, sure. So we set up different, tasks that they would do. So what you're seeing is them traveling independently. I didn't know what to expect. I just brought my video camera along and recorded it. And so that's what you're going to be seeing. So let's start with John. He had Usher's syndrome, and he could tell if the lights were on, but that was about it for vision, and he had no hearing. And so he had been born deaf and lost his vision later. So let's see what happens. Oh, darn, no. I want to explain that I'm narrating and explaining for those who cannot see the video what's happening in the video. So the interpreter and the captioning will be done for the actual what the people are actually saying, but not interpreting and captioning Donna explaining what's happening. But in the beginning of each one, I do explain who these people are, and so maybe you could interpret and caption that, and then from then on, let's see if it goes. Interpreters and captioners, please explain. He has come here every week to get his lottery tickets. Where he's going next, he's never been before. He's got my clothes that he's going to leave at the dry cleaners. The dry cleaning lady doesn't know him. All right. There are only about 30 people here. There are only about maybe 30 people here. Do we get the interpreter back? Is she back yet?
Yep, she's there.
All right, good. All right. I couldn't see her. So there are only about 30 people here. I don't know. We want to try open mics? Use that way? Jennifer, what do you think?
Sure, go for it. Whatever
Okay.
you'd like to do. If people want to
Okay.
unmute themselves to participate or use the chat box.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Yeah, I want you to unmute yourselves, and we're going to go through the list here and think about what kind of ways did Jack communicate. Can people give me examples of gestures that he did?
Pointing.
He pointed, yes. Give me the lottery over there. Good. What else?
He used his fingers to hold up numbers.
Yeah, that's right. He put up numbers. Good. Did anybody notice?
He spelled in her hand.
Good. He showed her how to do it, right? He kind of showed himself printing on himself. She got that. Then she took his hand and printed, and she did what so he had just, the way he communicated to her, I want you to print on my palm, and he gestured to her, demonstrated. Good. What else?
Let's see.
Were they writing on paper at the end?
Ah, yes, right. You want to go to the next one, notes and cards. There was one more gesture that I remember, and that's he wanted scratch off tickets. So he did kind of a little scratch off in the air. So he kind of did a little gesture, and she said, oh, scratch offs. And then he put up how many fingers. And yeah, let's talk about notes. He was writing on paper to them, wasn't he? Yes. Any other? Was there somebody else going to say something? Yeah, for the second person, he was doing a lot of note writing. She wanted to know his name and address, so she could fill out the form. And so he gave her all that information by writing it on this paper. Did anybody hear him speaking?
I didn't get any sound on the video on my end, so.
Right, neither did I.
Oh,
No, I didn't either.
No, either did I.
ew.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's not good.
Well, I thought it was supposed to be quiet. I don't know. I would have said something.
His point of view, right?
Right, that's what I thought. It was supposed to be slow.
Oh man. Okay. Oh man. I described for those of you who can't see, I described what was happening, but there was a little bit of conversation going on. There's going to be a lot more conversation in the next one. So let's see if we can't figure this out.
If the video is running slow, you're going to freeze up and the sound's going to drop.
Ah,
What we can try is having me run it from my computer rather than through the PowerPoint for the next one. All right, did anybody see anybody doing any tapping to alert that they were ready?
Yes. At the convenience store. I think, didn't he tap on the cash?
On the counter.
Beautiful, he held his hand out, tap, tap, ready. Now he knows to go into action. Good, good. Anybody else see any tapping or? I thought it was touching when the woman, the cleaner was writing and he was kind of looking around like what's going on, and she reached out and kind of just very gently held his hand to let him know she's on it. She didn't leave. So that wasn't a tap, but she communicated that way.
and it seemed like he had his hand on the hand that she was writing with.
I was
Kinda
wondering
kept
if
his
anybody would
hand on
notice.
that the whole time. So
I would.
I guess he could feel the movement of her hand
Yeah,
while she was writing in the other one. I don't know. I thought that was very
exactly.
sweet.
Oh, I didn't know if anybody was going to notice that. But if somebody's printing on your palm, you can feel in your skin the shape of it. But it's not, it's a little bit of a challenge. If you put your hand on top of the hand of the person who's writing, you get not only the sensation in your skin, you get the kinesthetic movement as they're moving the hand. And he's actually the one that taught me that. So I teach it to everybody, all the deafblind people I work with now, that if you're not understanding what the public is doing, put your hand on the hand of the person who's writing it, because you can kind of feel the movement in addition to feeling it in your skin. Good for who was it that noticed that?
Oh, Karen Black. I just thought it was sweet.
It was sweet. Oh, we're gonna hold hands. No, it was actually a communication strategy.
Cool. Bingo for me. You.
Yes. When I first saw him doing that, I'm thinking, what do you do? And then he explained to me, you can feel, oh well, duh, add that to my little list of ideas. And
I thought, wow, he bonds quickly with people.
gonna go out and walks in the park and next and at one point, I don't know if you noticed, she was writing in his palm and he tapped her like I didn't get it, and then put his hand on her hand, and then he got it. So good on you guys noticing all these little things. Did the public write? Oh, we talked about that. So the public wrote to him in his palm, right? Did anybody speak to him? Well, she tried. You couldn't hear it, but she was speaking, but it wasn't doing any good. So that was not a useful strategy for them to respond to him. Were there any yes/no signals? I didn't see any. Did you?
Mm-mm.
No.
Mm-mm.
Any actions?
I can give you a bag.
Say again? Somebody said they saw an action. Well, the lottery lady gave him his tickets. That could be considered a form of communication. Here are your tickets. And at the end, the lady at the cleaners gave him his bag. You know, she didn't say, excuse me, I'm going to be giving your bag now. She just gave him his bag. So an action. So actions can be considered forms of communication as well. He paid his money. That's an action. She gave him
Okay.
money back. That's an action. All right. All right. We're going to go to another movie. And this one, I just finished it about 5 minutes before this started. And I was very careful. What took me so long was making sure everything was described for those of you who can't see it. So let me see if I can find it. Let's see if I can find this. And maybe it'll work better if I do it directly. Let's see. See. Views. DeafBlind. Presentations. Now I'm going to start this and see if you guys can hear it. Well, I can't hear it, so there's a problem. Well, let's try it from the PowerPoint. John became completely blind. Can anybody hear that? Lost most of his hearing.
Yep.
Yes.
We're good now.
Yes, we can hear.
Radio Shack, which he knows is somewhere on this block. He is standing or walking slowly on the sidewalk, holding a card that's. Let me say for the captioning and interpreting that he knows that Radio Shack is somewhere on the block, but doesn't know exactly where it is. And his assignment that he was going to do, so I could show the people in Germany how deafblind people can go somewhere that don't know exactly where it is and using communication, get assistance to find it. And then when he gets inside, he's going to do it. Now, he had lost all his vision and a lot of his hearing from a motorcycle accident as an adult. So I think that's all that needs to be interpreted. Please give me some information so I can find where I'm going. I am both deaf and blind, so tap me if you can help. You can print letters in my palm with your fingertip. Thank you. A man passes him, then turns around and approaches and says, "What are you trying to do, buddy? Where you trying to go at?" I'm sorry, interpreter, Anna, and the captioning, please interpret what the people say, because I did not, there's no other way for them to know that, but, so. The man takes the card and reads it again, then starts to write in John's palm with his finger. John puts his card back in his pocket and the man guides him to the store. John takes the card out and holds it up again. The man reads it again while a salesman approaches. Gosh, it's so nice of you. I've come to buy a couple batteries. Batteries. You can print anything you want to say in the palm of my hand. Even though I can talk, I can't hear. My hearing is so low. The salesman starts to print in John's palm. Hi. Hello. He moves John's hand up and down. I tell you what I'd like. Please, if possible. He guides John to the counter. I've come to buy. I think to myself, what the heck is somebody that's blind and deaf doing at Radio Shack? You've come to the wrong place. I've come to buy two heavy-duty 9-volt batteries
and they're the size of a Messiah. They're the kind that have, they're not pen-like, they're the kind I know that have that male female that clip goes on like a transistor radio.
He prints in John's palm.
2. Oh, 9 volt?
He shakes John's hand up and down.
Uh-huh. 2 of them, please. 2 heavy-duty 9-volt batteries. C-size.
He moves John's hand sideways.
They said size C. I don't know if that's... I always thought C was like pen light or something, or D.
He taps John's hand.
The ones I want are the same as like for pocket radio.
He goes behind the counter and gets some batteries.
Thank you. 2 heavy-duty 9-volt batteries.
He prints C in John's hand, then gives him a battery.
Uh-huh. I don't know how this could be true. Thank you.
He prints 9B in John's hand and then gives him another battery.
9 volt. Oh, that's it. I know. This is the kind that she wanted. Do you have heavy duty this
He
size?
moves John's hand up and down.
Do you? 2 of these, please. I thought she said size C, but I must be wrong.
He goes to get the batteries.
2 of these, please.
He comes back and puts the batteries in John's hand.
What was that battery? Ever ready? No. Thank you. 2 9 volt. You can print the price in my hand, reducing your finger.
He prints the number 8 by drawing 2 circles in John's hand.
Oh.
He prints the number 8 in one movement.
Thank you, 8.
He prints the number 9.
What was that? 1 8 7.
He touches each of John's 4 fingers and thumb, then touches 4 fingers again. He slides his hand on John's palm as if to wipe the slate clean.
184.
He touches each of the fingers again, quickly, 9 times.
9. 189.
John became complete.
All right. Let's go down our list again, starting with John. Did he use any gestures? Did you see him use any gestures? I didn't myself.
I didn't see any gestures.
No, no gestures. Did you see him writing anything? Notes, cards?
Well, he had a card pre-printed.
He had a card, right?
Yes, he used a card to get people's attention and explain to them. And it actually says on there, please print in my palm. So the guy read it. The first one says, oh, deaf, I can't help you if you can't hear. Oh, read the card again, print on my palm. Oh, and the guy got it and printed on his palm. So very effective. Did he use any voice?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. How about symbols, pictures, map to communicate with the people around him?
Well, he knew the
I really
size of the
didn't see
battery.
one.
Huh? Say it again. For him to
No.
communicate to them, did he use any gestures or symbols? I'm sorry, not gestures, maps or anything like that?
I didn't see anything.
No.
No.
It was purely verbal.
Communication. Yeah.
That's right. His expressive was purely verbal. Now, their response to them, did anybody tap to alert them that they're ready? I don't remember seeing that.
No.
No. Did anybody write to him?
Yes.
Well, in his palm, yeah.
Yes, on his palm. Yeah. Both the fellow who helped him outside and then the salesperson was printing in his palm. Interesting that John could not get, he was printing 9, and I don't know what he was doing, but John thought, was that a 7? Is that a 2? I don't know what that is. So the guy had to be very creative to get across 9. So we'll get, when we get down to there. Did anybody speak to him? I mean, they all spoke to him, but did he hear anything? Did he get communication by them speaking?
No,
No.
I don't think so.
No.
No,
No.
no.
How about yes, no signals?
Yes.
Yes,
He
what
I
was,
thought he did his hand up and down.
He
Yeah,
shake his hand up and down.
Yeah.
that was so creative.
Hmm.
The first time I met a deafblind person, I didn't know anything. And so I put their hand on my head as I'm going up and down sideways. I didn't know how to do it. So I thought that was very creative. Yes, up and down in the hand means yes, and sideways means no. So very, very creative.
Well, I think the laundry guy would have liked that yes and no from you.
Yes, exactly. Any actions that the public
Giving him
did?
the batteries, maybe?
Yes, handed him the batteries, right?
Yes.
This is and printed in his
Well,
palm. 9.
I liked how he did the C, then gave him the C battery, then the 9V gave him the 9 volts so he could compare which one he wanted. So I thought that was cool.
So cool. And that's how it always goes, right? The public always can figure out how to communicate with a deafblind person. Any other actions that you saw? John wanted to know, where is the Radio Shack? So did the guy communicate, where's the Radio Shack?
We kind of took him there,
He
guided
took
him
him
there.
there. Yes, he guided him there. Very good. So that was an action. So where's this Radio Shack? I'll show you. And off we go.
Hmm.
What other actions? Let me think.
Now, there was also the action inside the store where the sales clerk kind of took him by the arm and kind of dragged him across the store.
It was gentle, but it didn't look too good, did it? Like, here, come on this way. Beautiful. Yeah, I can't think. Oh, how did the guy get across 9? He did not print it out on his palm because John was not getting it. How did
It was
he
like
get
he went
across?
across his fingers, like did 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4, 9, 9 or
Yeah.
something.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
7, 8,
9. I think-
9.
Wow.
That was good.
All right. Well, that was fun, guys. So I thought it'd be more fun to do that than go, here's how you can communicate, and here's some ideas, but like finding them. And so I guess we're done. Wow, that was early. We have nothing to do because now you know everything you need to know, because with appropriate communication strategies and being skilled with them, interaction's going to be smooth. You're good to go, right? What do you think, guys? Are we done?
Well, I liked it. I thought it was cool.
Oh, cool. All right. Are you ready to go? Or you got everything you know to go teach deafblind people how to communicate?
Well, I know more than I did before. And I'm taking the haptics class through Helen Keller, so we should go nicely with that.
Very nice. Well, guys, I am sorry to disappoint you. Very sorry. No. You haven't even started. You now have some ideas of how to communicate different strategies. But let me tell you, things will go wrong routinely. The instructor's role is crucial. If you don't teach them to understand what we're going to be talking about for the next hour, they're not going to realize that the public is clueless. They're going to assume everybody's like the guys at the cleaners and the Radio Shack. And what they do, this broke my heart the first time I saw it. They assume, why are they not doing what I even asked them to do it, and they're not doing it? They must be rude. They must be hateful. The first time I experienced this, I was so naive. I've been working with blind people who have normal hearing, and so I didn't run across this when working with them. I run across it all the time when working with deafblind people. So the first time this happened, I was with a young Gallaudet student. And she'd been deaf all her life. Now she's got, reduced visual field, retinitis pigmentosa. And so I figured she knew what she was doing. So, and when we got to this part of orientation mobility training includes getting help, getting assistance. So I figured, you're going to go and get help. I asked her to go into the grocery store. I told her to get something. I knew she didn't know where it was, so she's going to have to get some help. And so I'm good to go. done. I'm just going to watch this all happen. And beautiful, she was very creative, very intelligent. And so she wrote out a note. And I'm thinking, okay, that's what deaf people do. Can't, so she wrote a note. And she went to the little manager's office, put the note in there. And I'm assuming it said something like, please tell me where the raisins are. And the person was a Radio Shack person on that level, as far as I'm concerned, because she told my student where the raisins were. And my student just stood there with her cane, looking at her. And so this person figured out, okay, Henry, could you come and show her where the raisins are? And so she beckoned to my client to come. And so Henry came, and so they pointed to Henry, and so she's following Henry, and she's got this little visual field, and so after a while she lost Henry and doesn't know where Henry is, and comes back to me, at the end of the lesson, and I figured she'd say, wow, we got to figure out something to do because that didn't work. She was crying, saying, how could they be so mean to me? I've started to cry now, just even remembering this, because they did everything they could. They bent over backwards. They were on the level of Mr. Radio Shack and Miss Cleaner and doing everything they could think of. And it didn't work out. And so her assumption when it didn't work out is they hated her. They were being mean. I said, oh my gosh. Here's what they did. They went this and they went that, and they put all their action plans trying to get you to the raisins, and it didn't work out. And she was so glad to hear that. And I have found that if people, I'm going to start crying. This is crucial, guys. If people don't get the training to realize how clueless people are and what they need to do to make things happen, like it did at the Cleaners and the Radio Shack, they become disillusioned, they become suspicious and distrusting, and they start avoiding going out in public. Now, by the time I met this one guy who was a Vietnam vet, and he'd been deaf for about 8 years and then was losing his vision. So I went to start working with him, and I do my usual little song and dance saying, you're going to learn this and we can do that, and you're going to be able to do this and that and the other thing. And he said, oh, that sounds great. I'm all excited, but not in my neighborhood. And I'm thinking, I'm sorry, did I hear you right? Why would you not want to be able to travel independently in your own neighborhood? And he said, the people around here, they hate deafblind people. Thank goodness I'd already had by that time about 10 or 15 years of experience, and I knew exactly what had happened. And he told me later some of the stories. He was riding a bus, and the bus driver kicked him off in the middle of a parking lot. And he told me some other stories. And I know that bus driver had no idea he was deaf and blind. I don't know what happened, but there was a miscommunication, and the client's assumption was they hate deafblind people. So the responsibility of the instructor, and we had a discussion about who is the instructor. I'm normally talking with orientation and mobility specialists, but I think that any instructor can take on this role and provide this instruction. And here's how you do it. Here's how you teach deafblind people to communicate with the public. As I said, all of this is on my website, so you don't have to try to take the notes. But first of all, you sit down with them and explain what kind of strategies exist that they might be able to communicate with other people. And go through as many as you think that would be applicable. And then the student chooses and choose as many as possible. The more ways that they have to be able to communicate, the better chance they have for success. And I have a little footnote here, and I want to emphasize, you don't know which one's best. And I'm telling you, honey, from experience, because I thought I knew what was best. And I would put my big foot in there and I say, oh, that's not going to work. That's not a good strategy. And then they did it,
and it worked. For them, in that situation, it worked. So I have learned to shut my mouth, brainstorm with them, come up with as many ways as we can think of to communicate, and go with it. And I'll tell you, what happens is they will get the feedback that they need, not from you, but from trying it and seeing what works and what doesn't. And the way that they can see what works and what doesn't is what you're going to be doing, which is being their eyes and ears for this experience. So that comes a little bit later. I just want to emphasize, you are not responsible to know what's best. The student will find out from experience, okay? So the student chooses the communication strategies that they want to use and becomes skilled. You don't send them out unless they're skilled. They can receive print on palm. They know how to put their hand on the person to make it more legible, or however, you know, if they're, whatever their strategies are, is they need to be skilled with it before they go out. Then do some role playing if needed. Then the student considers, what do they need? And then how to explain it to others. And I'll cover this a little bit more. Then the student learns to prepare and organize for trips. And then you go over with them the principles for successful interaction, which we're going to go over in a minute. And then you practice. Practice. They go out and try this. You start in very structured, easy situations, and advance to unstructured, chaotic situations. And so we have a list here of, and I'd like you to help me please figure out which of these is maybe the easiest or the most structured, or where the communication partners are willing and they're able and patient. And the list is talking with a bus driver, using a bus, talking with a bus driver, going to the cleaners or the post office, going to a grocery store, going to a large department store, soliciting aid to cross the street, soliciting aid to find an unfamiliar destination like John did, soliciting aid when you're lost, you don't know where you are. What would be, maybe from this list, what do you think might be most structured, easiest with communication partners that are willing and patient?
Maybe a post office or a
Yeah.
cleaner, only because there might not be a lot of people in there at that time.
Yeah, exactly. And they know why you're coming.
Yeah.
You either want to get some mail done. So it's very structured. It's not this open-ended thing. I don't know what they want. What the heck do they want? So very structured. Excellent. Cleaners and post office. What else might be a nice structured with a communication partner who's willing and able?
So this is Valerie. When I taught O&M with adults and we would go to the grocery store, we would go up to the information and assistance and all those techniques so that they could independently get around the grocery store.
Beautiful, beautiful. A grocery store, if you structure it like you're talking about, can be a very good beginning thing. Beautiful, Valerie. That's great. So cleaners, grocery store, and I love Valerie's suggestions for structuring it. Back in the day, it was not required that anybody serve everybody. So we would get in the habit of going up to the grocery store and talking with the manager. I would be interpreting so that the person was going there, and we'd say, you know, I live in the neighborhood, I'm going to be shopping here, I would need some help. When would be a good, what do I do? Do I come here? How do I get some help? Do you want me to call ahead? So that it's all arranged ahead of time, how they're going to get help, and that they're expecting him. So beautiful. What would be the next easiest or the next most structured?
Well, with one of my students, I set it up ahead of time with the Walmart person, but he needed help finding a specific item or an area like where the deodorants were kept and that kind of thing. And so I had already talked to the people, explained what we were doing, and then we had practiced asking for things at school. So that was kind of structured, maybe something like that.
Karen, I love the idea that you're going for how to make this structured.
And
I just wanted him to be successful
Oh, I love it. I love it. You know what?
and
We're going
not
to jump to
stressed.
the next one. We're going to, I'm sorry. There's a slide later and we're going to jump to that now because you just said you want it to be successful. You want to have them feeling good and make this a success. And so I'm going to hold that actually, because that is a whole thing in itself. And we talked about structuring it at the grocery store only because they're going to be going in there frequently. And so that's what we often do with blind people with normal hearing. But you're teaching them to communicate with the public. So preparing the public ahead of time is another issue. So, but I love where you're going. So you're thinking, well, we could just make everything structured if we plan ahead. And that actually, there's a truth to that. But let's go through this list. Let's go the other way. What is the least structured, the most chaotic, the most difficult, where the partners are not willing, not patient? Gina,
I would think maybe crossing a street or a bus driver because they've got a schedule.
Actually, I would put a street crossing as very structured. You want to do one thing. How do you do it? You guide them across. It's like, not, so it's very structured. Actually, I'll put that as pretty early in the practice session. But what did you say about bus drivers?
Well, they have schedules to keep. They might not have the time.
Exactly. I do buses almost last. I never have a person try to practice using a bus until they've had lots of practice and experience on these easier, more structured situations. Then we say, all right, honey, you're ready for the big time. We're going to go tackle the bus driver, because they do not have time to mess around. You need the deafblind person has to be very experienced and very knowing about all the principles that we're going to be talking about, like having backup plans and having all this going on before you go to a bus. Beautiful, beautiful. And where would we put soliciting aid when you're lost? Would that be kind of like easy or unstructured?
To me, that would be difficult.
Yeah.
That would be less structured, because what you have, first of all, depending on the person's location and the number of people that are going on about their daily business, the patience that one would have if he or she happens to reach out for help or solicit help, and then the helper's inability to understand and or have the patience to take the time to understand what and where this person is trying to go or what help it is that they're trying to solicit.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. As opposed to the guy in the cleaners who is like, I'll take your business. I'll spend time with you. Beautiful. That was Donna speaking?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, beautiful. And it's also the least structured, because how are you going to get the information? We're going to talk a little bit about, you have to know what you want. It's a very loose, open, blah, blah. Well, I'll just go ahead and give you an example now. There was a guy, he could hear some and he could see some, but not enough that when the bus pulled up in a quiet neighborhood, he couldn't hear it or see it, and the doors open. He didn't know it was there. He's still standing. So very hard of hearing, could see very little. And he's traveling around and he realized he's lost. And so he's standing at the street corner, and some people came over and offered to help, meaning help cross the street. And he dismissed them. And I said later, you could have gotten some help from them as to where you are. And then we talked about how would he have done that? He didn't have an idea of what he needed to know where he is. And so he thought and thought and thought. He said, well, if they could point which direction was McDonald's, I'd first of all know which way I'm facing. And I could ask the name of the street. So he had to think about what he wanted, what he needed in order to get where he's going. So It's very unstructured. The person, the deafblind person, has to put a lot of thought into what do I want them to do, and how are we going to want them to do it. So, all right. So you get an idea of how you're going to structure the experiences. And now we're going to go into principles of successful interaction with the public. So the first principle is always assume that the others don't understand the situation. They don't know what to do. You're going to have to explain it to them, and they're still not going to get it. So you have to explain it again. And when they still don't do what you want, it's probably because they still didn't realize you're deaf and blind and what you want them to do. And many of them, and I've found out over the years, there's 3 reasons that they don't get it. One is that they're just like, their mind is blown. You know, they just can't believe it, or they're incredulous. I guess that's the same thing. Sometimes they're just not paying attention. They're, you know, distracted with something, and you're explaining that I'm deaf and blind. I want you to go walk on water. And I'm sorry, what? Hello? And, you know, so they just didn't get it. But I always like to share this example of a guy who was just incredulous. We did some experiments. We were trying to figure out what's the wording on the card that would be most effective to get help to cross the street. So we had 2 different cards. Both of them said I'm deaf and blind. One said I'm deaf and blind on the top. And we found out, and I'll tell you later, that doesn't help. You saw the guy said, oh, you're deaf, I can't help you. It's like, off we go. So, but this card had on the top, I'm deaf and blind. Please help me to cross the street. Thank you, have a nice day. Let's go take walks in the nature or whatever. And so we had a deafblind person standing at the corner with holding up one of these cards. We had 2 of us with clipboards waiting for people to pass by, and we'd start, hey, excuse me, just curious, did you see that person? Did you realize they needed help? Why didn't you help? Et cetera, et cetera. And we had one person waiting across the street, where if somebody guided them across, there we were waiting, hi, how did you realize the person needed help? Did you realize the person was deaf? And blah, blah, blah. So this one guy helped the deafblind person across. And then they say goodbye. And then Donna comes up with her clipboard and said, hello, you know, I'm doing a little survey. And did you realize this and that, the other thing? And one of the questions was, did you read the card? Oh, yes, I read the whole thing. I was really curious about that card, blah, 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 blah. And did you realize that the person is deaf? No. And I put my clipboard down and I said, I'm so glad to talk to you. I'm so glad to meet you, because I can't tell you how many people don't know the person's deaf, even though they told them they're deaf. You read that card, it said he's deaf. Why didn't you know he's deaf? And I just love this guy. He just like, oh, I read the card. I saw the word deaf. I didn't know he was deaf. Well, you know, I can imagine someone who's blind walking around. I can imagine someone who's deaf walking around. I can't imagine someone who's deaf and blind walking around. So when he read that, deaf and blind, and looked at the person walking around by himself, standing there, nah, that's not happening. So they can be incredulous. So your student needs to know that the public, even though you have printed letters with bells and whistles, I'm deaf and blind, they're not going to get it. I have videos of John explaining that, and the guy's like, yeah, right. And so blah, 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 and keeps on talking. So that's the first principle. The second principle is have a fail-safe procedure. Have a way to recognize when the communication's not working, and so that you can go into plan B. One example is, this is a really effective way to communicate with a bus driver to let you know when to get off the bus. You give them a sign that says, when the bus arrives at Amity Road and Main Street, please return this card to me. I'm deaf and blind. You can print messages in my palm with a finger. Thank you. This, and so how would the deafblind person comes on the bus and shows the driver this card, how would he know that the communication's not working? What's the fail-safe built into this strategy?
I don't know if he never gets the card back.
Yeah, or he never keeps the card. Well, I guess if you don't get the card, if he takes the card and you don't get it back when it's your bus stop, I guess it's too late to realize that didn't work. But they won't take the card. For this to work, he has to keep the card and then be able to give it to him. And so if they don't take it, it's not working. So then you have to go into plan B, have some kind of a backup plan. If it didn't work the first time, what can you do what else can you try? In this case, on the back of the card, it says, "I'm deaf and blind. Please read the other side of this card." And that usually works. If that doesn't work, the backup plan usually is get off the bus, because you're not.
You can't hear.
Can you all hear me now?
You say no.
Still
You said
muted?
get off the bus and then we did.
Okay. Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you're unmuted.
We can
Okay,
hear
good.
you now.
Yeah, somebody was making noises, so we all got muted. So my cat came in the room, but anyway.
What came after get off the bus? Because that's
Okay,
where we
okay.
lost you.
Yeah, I was going to say that if you're not, that way the person knows that there's no communication going on with the driver, so you're not going to get told how to, when to get off the bus. So one thing you can do is just not get on that bus. That might be your backup plan, or you come up with different backup plans. It's really fun. The creative ways that people come up with, a deafblind person can come up with, a student can come up with. All right, if that doesn't work, different backup plans, so that make sure that they have lots of backup plans and know that they're going to need them. Expect that you're going to need that backup plan, because it's not going to work the first time. Let's see. Next one. Okay. Another strategy that works, a principle that works, is having a forced choice communication option. This can work when you've got to either expedite communication, like with a bus driver who doesn't have a lot of time, or it can simplify the response. The first time I came up with this, I was working with a young man, born deaf, restricted visual field from Usher syndrome, and had a cognitive disability. And so he understood English kind of, and concepts kind of, but it needed to be pretty simple. So I sent him into the store. He was supposed to find some kind of a thingamajig, and I knew it was something he couldn't find himself, so he was going to have to go and ask for help to find it. So the note said, "I am looking for a thingamajig," whatever it was. Please, I forget, give me this thingamajig, whatever. So they wrote a long note. "We have thingamajigs, but we don't have them now. The truck is coming on Monday. You could get them on Monday." And so he looked at that and had no idea what they were saying. So he wandered around the aisles for about half an hour. And then I said, "All right, time's up, let's go." So we thought, okay, how can we make this structured so that he could understand what their response was? So we made a checklist for them. So his next time he went in, and this worked really well, "I would like to buy," and then he could write in whatever he wants, thingamajig. "Please," I forget, "please tell me which of these." And first one they could check is, "We've got it, I'll go get it for you." The next one to check is, "We carry it, but don't have it now. We should have it by," and then there was a blank for them to fill in. And the third one was, "We don't carry thingamajigs." So when they could respond and he could understand them, because he could he could learn ahead of time what each of those checks meant. So structuring the response can make it simple for the deafblind person and for the public. Here's a great example that was used by Dr. Jean Borkwin with Boppin. Boppin had to ask the train station manager, which track where the train was in, because you never knew which track it was going to come in. And the trains manager didn't have a lot of time to spell out it's going to be in track number 8, or that would be 8 with 2 0, whatever. So they came up with this ingenious thing. It's a card. It says, what track will the Huntington train leave from? Please place the clip on the number of the track. Thank you. I'm deaf and blind. You can print letters in my palm. So the clip is left, the paper clip is left on a default, which in this case is, I don't know yet. And then the manager can move it to place the clip on the number of the track. When he gives the card back, then Bobbin could read over, okay, it's in track number 3. Thank him and goodbye. So that's another example of a forced choice thing. Another one was it's the same Gallaudet student who was went to the grocery store, but now she's traveling on the bus and she's not sure where the bus is going to let her off. And so she wants to ask the driver, where is the closest stop that's closest to where she wants to get off. So she said, she came up with this on her own. I said, how are you going to communicate this quickly to the driver? And she had some vision. So she made a little map. And then she wrote, please point to the bus stop that's closest to Main Street and Cherry Street. I'm deaf and visually impaired, thank you. So she presented to him. He pointed to the intersection where he was going to let her off, and that was done. So again, a forced choice made it quick for the driver, and so it can expedite and make things simple. Now, here we go with know your needs and how to advocate for them. I already gave the example of the young man who didn't know really how he wanted the people to help, so to help him figure out where he was. This same young man, very hard of hearing, like I said, but he wanted to go to the bank counter. And so he decided to go in with a card saying, please help me to the, I forget what it said, please tell me where the bank counter is or whatever. Or maybe just, I forget what his card said. But this fabulous guy came up to him and was telling him where the counter was, and he was pointing to the counter, and he was doing he spent about 10 minutes with my client trying to figure out how to tell him where the bank teller was. Finally the people came from behind the counter and guided him over to there, and he finished his business, and later we debriefed, and I said, how did you want that guy to help you? I wanted him to tell me. Okay, he was telling you, but with his very thick accent, you couldn't hear it. So how would you want him to tell you? Or would you want him to help? He didn't really have a plan. And when he thought about it, he finally said, well, I could have him guide me. I said, oh my God, if that guy knew you wanted him to guide you, he would have done it 20 times. He would have done it. He just didn't know what you wanted. And part of the problem was he didn't know what he wanted either. So make sure that you know what you need, and then how to advocate for that, how to let them know that this is what you want. Yeah, the next principle is, and we learned this from this study I did that I told you about, where we had people holding different cards up. And we found out that you need to explain first, what do you want? Don't tell them you're deaf-blind first, because that scares the jeebies out of them. They need to know, what do you want? Then second, what do you want them to do about that? My client said he wanted to find the bank counter, but he didn't explain, what does he want the person to do about that? Could you guide me to the counter, please? And then thirdly, and this is not important, it could be left off that you are visual impairment and hearing impairment. That's not the important part. What's important, all the people need to know is, what do you want, and how can they help? What do you want them to do about it? So here's an example of the streetcars and card that was eventually developed. It does say, please help me to at the top, and that's not the first, but in big, bold things, cross street, tap me if you can help. I'm deaf and blind. The first cards that came out didn't say to tap me. It just says, please help me to cross the street. So people would come up and offer to help, and then they'd leave when the deafblind person couldn't hear them. So what do you want? And then what do you want them to do about that? And then maybe I'm deaf and blind. I had talked earlier about using pictures to communicate. And here's a great example. There's a picture of a person guiding another person. So that can, that can be helping to communicate as well. All right. Prior to going out, the student will plan every necessary communication, prepare all the notes, the cards, and the equipment that they need to communicate. I have pictures here of some people use like a little picture album, and then they'll have a picture album for going to the store, and another picture album for going to the doctor, and another picture album for going to their friend. And so each time they turn a page, it has another thing to show. This one says, please guide me to the bathroom. Well, I'm deaf and blind, you can print. Okay, so don't know when we'll be using that, but anyway, so be prepared with all your equipment, get them organized so that they're easily usable. I'll tell you one little story. There was a guy who had a lot of vision, working at Gallaudet, got an internship, and we had to transfer buses to get there. So I was showing him how to do that, and we worked out the communication. And I said, he had different cards, for different drivers and whatnot. And I said, do you want to mark these? And, no, I'm fine. So a couple of weeks later, one of the people at Gallaudet said, hey, how's it going? Traveling? Yeah, I'm using the bus. Well, how do you do it? I use these cards. Well, show me your card. He pulled out the card that he would use to show the driver. And the woman looked at it and said, hi, you're pretty. Want to get off at the next stop with me? And he said, oh, no, that's not the card I meant.
Oh, man.
So make sure that they can identify which card they're going to be using for what time. And then, as we said, plan the backup and another backup and another backup for each communication task. If that doesn't work, what's next? That doesn't work, what's next? And then brainstorm ways to get people's attention and their assistance for each expected situation. This planning trip, this planning time, takes about 3 times as long as the actual task itself. It's incredibly important that you do this planning. Now we're going to get to, who was it? I think, I forget who was it, Kathy or Karen? Somebody was talking about preparing the public ahead of time. So do you think the instructor should maybe increase the chances of success by preparing the public, or maybe during the interaction it's not going well, maybe go in and give some little hints to the public or to the student? What do you think? What do people think about doing that? I'll give you an example. There was a travel instructor working with a young high school student, normal vision and deaf. And so the instructor said, all right, take this symbol for TTY. This was many years ago. I don't know what the symbol of TTY was. Take this symbol of TTY and go to the policeman over there at the Grand Central Station and find out where the TTY is. So the student went, it was a lot of crowd, a lot of people around the police and the security, whatever. And so he went up and handed him the card, and the policeman looked at this card and looked at the student and like, what do you want me to do? So the instructor at the back behind all these people is pointing to his ear and pointing to the student, pointing to his ear, pointing to the student, so that the cop would figure out what to do. Well, first of all, the cop still didn't know what to do. But what do you think the student, if it had worked, what do you think the student would have learned? I guess everybody's muted. Can you unmute them?
That if you point to your ear, that's adequate communication.
Well, he didn't even know the instructor was doing that.
Well, okay.
He didn't even know that was going on. He's standing with the policeman. The policeman's looking at the card, and then the instructor's behind the student, pointing to his ear, trying to help the cop figure out what to do. If that had worked, the student didn't know he was doing that. So what would the student think? What would the student have learned?
That the card was sufficient or something?
Yeah,
Right, that the
this is a
card works.
successful strategy. Then when he's by himself and it doesn't work, there's only one reason. They hate deafblind people. Right? So you cannot prepare the public ahead of time. And I'm sorry who is smacking their wrist, Valerie or whoever, because you had some
Nope,
good
that was
ideas.
me.
That was Karen. Okay. So sorry, because actually that, we do that a lot with people when we're working with people who are blind at normal hearing. And they understand that, preparing ahead, it works. I mean, actually that would be very good for the deafblind person to call ahead and prepare that. So that actually is a great idea. So kudos to you, Karen. It's just that it shouldn't.
No, this boy had only been blind. I mean, he was high school and he just lost his vision 4 months before and was hesitant to even go out where people could see him with a cane. And I just wanted him to have one, successful thing so he would know it's okay to ask for help because he would. And so that's the reason I structured it so much,
Karen, I applaud that. And I think that that's so important. And actually, I love your idea. Does anybody have any ideas of how she could have done that without him getting the wrong impression that people at Walmart or wherever you were all know what to do? How could she have done that, give him success without her calling the public, calling ahead of time? Because I love that, Karen. That's actually beautiful. You want them to, well, first of all, you could find a place like a cleaners that, where you don't have to call ahead. They know what you want. But even for that, I think if you had the student himself call, make the arrangements, then he wouldn't be under the false impression, boy, everybody knows what to do. It's just a miracle. But he would still have the success, but he would not have had you secretly preparing the public. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. So during the experience, the instructor observes unobtrusively. I've done a lot of window shopping, looking for trinkets and here and there and watching what's going on and listening and refrains from interfering. Make sure that the student understands you're not going to interfere. If it doesn't go well, they're going to decide when to give up and go back, knowing that you're not going to step in, hey, this is not working. Let's try something else, and explain it to the staff. This is maybe the only time for those who have very little or no vision or hearing. This may be the only times that they have eyes and ears. This is their time to find out what the heck is going on around me. So that if they get kicked off the bus and put into a parking lot, they'll know why, because you would have been observing. You know what happened? The driver thought that was your, I don't know what happened, but they would find out because you would be their eyes and ears. And then you afterwards tell them everything you observed. Here's what happened. The guy looked like he was distracted. He was, whatever. And don't make it sugary. Don't sugarcoat it. The guy looked pissed. The guy looked he was not in a good mood, and he complained about, whatever you see, you tell them, and then you brainstorm. Here's what I told you before, that how are the student going to know what works and what doesn't? It's this part of the process. You're going to objectively provide objective feedback about what you observed, and then you brainstorm. What went wrong? How can we improve that? Why did that work? Why didn't that work? New ideas to improve and try next time. Now, Jack is back. The guy that was at the cleaners and getting his lottery tickets. We're going to see Jack back because he had a terrible experience. He didn't know the experience was bad, but he went into a grocery store right after the cleaners. He went into the grocery store, and the mic is on him, and the people seeing this woman with the big camera don't know that he's the one with the mic. And first of all, they're saying while he's there, what is wrong with that woman sending someone like this into the store? She has no business and whatnot. And then he wanted some tea, Lipton tea,
and they didn't have that size, so they're running around in circles. What are we going to do? We don't have that size. How do we know him? He's waiting there. So they finally said, they got him some tea and they put it in his hand, and he's shaking his head. He's shaking his head. I guess that's what he wants. So, you know, they were going crazy, and he didn't know anything was wrong. So I was his eyes and ears, and I told him, wow, that did not work. Oh, it worked fine. I got home my tea. Yeah, but here's what happened. So he came up with all kinds of things, like I can maybe hold a card next time. I can have a little sign on my lapel. I'm deafblind, although they knew he was deafblind. But so he came up with different plans. And so let's go find out what he does the next time. And again, if you could interpreter and captioner, please interpret and caption what the people say, but I'm going to be describing what's moving, and you don't need to interpret that.
Donna, FYI, it's already 4:20 and we do have a couple questions in the chat box.
Should we just skip this?
It's up to you. I mean, or
We'll just show it real quick and then we'll have questions. Okay.
Jack is standing with his white cane near the window of the grocery store manager's office, holding up a card that says, quote,
Can you hear it?
I need to find a salesman. I am both deaf and blind, so tap me if you can help. You can print letters in my palm with your fingertip. Thank you, unquote. Jack moves forward, and when he touches a woman, he backs up and points to the card. She reads it and points inside the window. A saleswoman approaches and taps him, and he shows her the card.
How can I help you, sir? How can I help you? What do you need for that? Yeah, what do you need? I am a salesperson. How can I help you?
Jack gestures and demonstrates how he wants her to write in his palm.
Are you okay?
It worked at the cleaner.
What do you need?
Jack puts the card away and tries to write on her palm with his finger.
What do you want? How can I help you? What do you need? You want to buy something? I'm afraid I don't know sign language. I'm going to have to get someone else to learn sign language.
Jack tries to write her a note with his finger on his own palm.
Can you write? Can you write? Tell me what you want. I'll see if I can help you.
Jack takes out a pen and paper and starts to write a note while she watches. When he's done, he shows it to her and she reads it. He writes another note. And she prints on his palm.
Yay! So how many backup plans did he have to accomplish that?
Like the first two didn't work, so he wrote on paper.
Yeah. He tried to show her. That worked for the other. He tried. First of all, I showed the card. It says print on my palm. And that worked for Jack, standing out in the street corner, right? That didn't work with this lady. Then he showed her, that worked at the cleaners. Do you need a pen? No, that's not one. Then he tried writing on her palm. Oh, can you write? Well, yeah, I'm writing on your palm. And then finally, okay, then he gets a note out. So it was like this fourth time. So anyway, I think that's it, guys. All right, questions?
Oh, if I can. So from the chat box, we had first one says, what level of cognitive abilities is required for this level of independence?
You know, is there a number? Are you looking for a number? Because let me put it this way. I've worked with some people with limited cognitive ability. And to the degree, let me put it this, okay. I've worked with, if they can learn what to do in an emergency, what if they get lost? You know, have some kind of procedure. We had this one young man who we had, you know, the emergency card. And for him to understand that this is what you have to do when you're lost, you know, what we did was I went with him while somebody from the center took us shopping. Oh, we're going to be exciting. It's a great day. And then after, you know, we shopped and enjoyed and everything, and the person left. And I said, I want to go home. What are we going to do? I want to go home. I'm tired. What are we going to do? I want to go home. And then we had explained before that he goes to a store, whatever, and shows this card. Please call this emergency number. Have them come and get me. And it took a couple of trips for him to kind of put that together, that, okay, if I don't know, if I need help or whatever, I go and do that. So we were so pleased because finally he went and did it. And we got a call from the store. There's a guy here, his name's Bill, you know, whatever, and we need to come and get him. Great, we'll come there. Well, then the student got up and left. He didn't realize he's supposed to stay there. So knowing what to do in an emergency if things go bad, and having the skills other than communication to be able to travel independently, I don't see why with some creativity they can't learn to communicate with the public, as you know, learning these principles. But I don't know. That's to find out. Does that answer? Probably not.
So we had another question of, is the pharmacy very structured? When you're talking about, I think, of the trip in the pharmacy.
How many, can we unmute and say how many think that would be structured? Go in, you have a prescription, you want it filled.
That would be structured.
That'd be structured. Does anybody think it's not structured? That's pretty open-ended. They don't know why is this guy here? And they don't have a willing
pharmacy for a non-pharmaceutical item. Yes.
That's true. That's true.
Or if you don't have a prescription, if you need something off the shelf, it's harder.
That's right. Then you're back into a more open. Yeah. So it depends on what the task is, doesn't it? Good, guys.
And then one other thing that would kind of make it a little less structured is, say, for instance, if the pharmacist had some questions for the customer, or if the customer had some questions for the pharmacist.
Beautiful. Yeah.
You know, there was nobody there to interpret that part or to.
Well, that's the whole idea. They're learning to go by themselves with no interpreter. Yeah. So,
right. So
yeah.
that would make it less structured.
Yep. And you'd have to have the communication strategies in place, wouldn't you? And be skillful and practiced at that before you go there. So hopefully you'd be able. Good point, Donna.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions?
You may have answered this already in the former, what you were just discussing, but what are the prerequisite skills you suggest the individual have before you work on independent travel?
Oh gosh, that's a whole, you're talking about orientation, mobility, and are they able to travel safely and not trip and stumble over things and whatnot. So that's very complicated. What we're just focusing on now is having them communicate independently. And I guess I would encourage those of you who work with or family members who are deafblind to realize that they're getting experiences from you with exposure in the community, but they're having the belief that things go smoothly. And so they need to learn that when you're not there, that they can develop ways to communicate, and they have to learn all these principles that we've talked about, like people are going to be clueless. You know, when you have your mother there, your instructor there, it's one thing, and the interpreter there. but to have them understand that things aren't like that when they're out on their own. So I don't think it's ever too early to teach them that traveling with you in the community is different than traveling alone, and the kind of skills that they would need, and start, introducing them to some of those skills.
And one more,
Yes.
could Jack have already had a card written as a last resort when things didn't work?
Beautiful. Yeah, that would be a nice backup, right? Yeah. He had the advantage that he could write on the spot. And so, as I said before, the more strategies you have for communicating, the better. And if you can create cards and letters and notes on the spot, that really works. But having something you can hold up to get people's attention is more helpful.
Donna?
Yeah.
There's also a lot of speech to text things that are out there and available. The smartphones and the new technology have made things so much easier than when we started.
Wow. Right. You don't even need paper and pencil anymore, do you? Beautiful. Thank you, Sharon.
It also means you can keep 100 different notes in your phone for different
situations. No number three.
Your pharmacy. I'm here to pick up my medicine. I'm here to pick up my laundry. I'm here to pick up my whatever. I need 3 items. Can someone help me? I mean, you can have all of those pre-printed if you wanted to, on top of your shopping list or on top of the number for your pharmacy identification or whatever.
But even with my kids now, I tell them technology can fail. You need to have something in your toolbox that isn't reliant on technology. Your cell dies, you're in a bad cell area, your phone just blows up. You better have a tool in your toolbox.
A backup plan, right?
Technology.
Exactly.
Backup plan.
Exactly, but the technology is so much fun nowadays.
Oh yeah.
Good. One of the principles was backup plan. That didn't work. All right, is it time to close?